Bob took away our scholarship, which we were kind of counting on.
But then we remembered that we have a college fund with our dear financial advisor, Dawn.
You don't have enough money.
Okay, right here. It says right here in this account we have $401,000.
Jackpot.
You missed it.
Nope. That says you have a 401k account. If you liquidate that right now, you'll have, maybe $5,000.
So what happened to the other $396,000?
Boom.
Gotcha.
What is wrong with the two of you?
Welcome to Money Unplugged. I'm Chris Hill. Thanks for being here. How you doing? Are you ready for Halloween? You have your costume? Have you got enough candy for the kids who are going to be showing up on the 31st? Don't be afraid to, buy a little bit more than you think you will need. And then if there just happens to be some left over, it's a little bonus for you once the calendar flips to November. Today on the show, I talk with Todd Wenning. And he is another one of these people who has just got a lot going on. He is a certified financial advisor and the founder of KNA Capital Management, an investment advisory firm. He is the longtime writer of the investment blog Flyover Stocks, and he's a lecturer at the University of Dayton. We had a great talk. We talked about the classes he's teaching, the movie that he uses to teach his students about bank liquidity. And as you probably figured out from the title of this episode, Todd has one of the all-time memorable first jobs as a teenager. So let's get into it with Todd Wenning. Remind me where you grew up.
I grew up split between Cincinnati, on the west side of Cincinnati, and then when I was 11, my family moved to northeast New Jersey, Bergen County. So I went to middle school and high school there and ended up going to school in Philadelphia for college. What
caused the move? Was it someone's job?
Yeah, my dad got a new job in just outside of New York City, and I think it was originally in Paramus, New Jersey. So we lived a couple towns away from there.
What did your dad do?
He was in marketing research. He did that for his entire career.
And was money something that was discussed in the home?
Not a lot. Certainly not investing. The earliest memory I have of money was when I went to my grandmother's church. I forget how old I was. I was a kid, and there was this box at the back of the church that said "pennies from heaven," and I thought that's a funny word, and I think it was a song. And my aunt, I believe, said, that your grandmother came up with that. And it was for all the parishioners on their way out of church on Sunday to donate their loose change. And it helped defray the cost of the freshman year education at the local Catholic high schools. So I just always thought that was a really interesting thing. And as I think back on it more as an adult, I realized what a special thought that was. It was very selfless. And it just gave great lessons that even small amounts, can really make a difference in people's lives. And I'm not sure she thought about it this way, but it's an investment, a donation. It's maybe it defrayed the cost of a kid who really needed to get into one of those Catholic schools, and they went on and their lives compounded in a positive way because of that. So as an investor, we think about monetary compounding, but there's also life compounding as well, and going in the right direction.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the sort of hidden, underrated things about scholarships is the way it can positively impact the trajectory of a student's life.
Absolutely. And it's just one less loan that you have to carry with you through life.
Absolutely. What was the first job you had when you were a kid?
My first real job was I worked at my dad's friend's pool cleaning company. And this was Bergen County, New Jersey. And we had some really nice houses that we cleaned. One of the houses was overlooking the Hudson River and the skyline of Manhattan. And probably the most notable one, definitely the most notable one, was Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy was one of the pools on my list.
You cleaned Eddie Murphy's pool?
Many times, yes. He had an indoor pool. He's since moved from that house, but it was an indoor pool with a retractable roof, which back in the early 2000s was, really, it's still pretty cool, but it was pretty exciting back then. So because of that, I got to go to Eddie Murphy's house a couple times. So it was really interesting.
Did that make up for what I assume was not a very big wage?
Right. No, it was not a very big wage, but my dad's friend, was very kind to me and took me out. I was not the best employee in the world, but he trusted me to drive the van around and clean people's pools, and happened to go to Eddie Murphy's house and be able to see how Eddie lives. It was a pretty interesting experience.
In all seriousness, did that change the way you think about money, to see wealth on that level up close?
Certainly not just Eddie's house, but all those houses that we cleaned, but just living in Bergen County in general. You have a lot of New York commuters, a lot of people in finance, a lot of people in the hospitals, medicine, and there's some serious money in that area. So coming from the west side of Cincinnati, it was certainly a big change for me culturally.
Moving forward, you went to St. Joseph's University. Am I right that you got a degree in history?
I did. I studied history, and I intended on being a history professor. So I ended up eventually teaching finance in college, but I was interested in becoming a history professor. I had some great history professors in high school and in grade school that got me into history. And so I just wanted to pursue something that I was really passionate about. And history just fit the bill. I loved doing the research. And what I found, with hindsight, I didn't know at the time, was that what I picked up from history and applied to investing was the ability to research and communicate. And those were things that my professors really stressed at St. Joe's. I had some great professors. They would grade for grammar, which today, no one grades for grammar. But they were grading for grammar, making sure that I was speaking clearly and writing effectively, and that I was able to pull and synthesize different data points, research material, and come up with a new narrative. That's basically what investing is. And I learned those disciplines through the history major.
Before we get to your abandoned career in history, what was the area of history that you found the most interesting?
I didn't focus on any particular region. One of the nice things about the program at St. Joe's in Philly was I did a little bit of everything. I studied Latin American history, East Asian history, European history, American history. And so it gave me a sense of appreciation for what underpins cultures of different parts of the world, whether it's Confucianism in China and how that's a different modality of thinking than what we have in Western societies.
And at any point as you are pursuing this degree, does anyone, whether it's one of your great professors or one of your parents or someone in your life, does anyone say the following sentence: hey, nobody gets wealthy being a history professor?
Well, that probably crossed my mind at some point. I think I remember after my freshman year thinking, this is a private school, and I'm taking out some money to go to school here. I started thinking about the ROI. The numbers started clicking for the first time in my head. And then I started speaking with some college professors who had gone that route, the PhD route. And it just seemed like it was going to be a lot of effort to make sure I got into the right schools. And then you don't know kind of where you're going, where you're going to be, where the job's going to be. And so until you get tenure, it's a pretty nomadic lifestyle is what I learned. And I just thought that really wasn't what I wanted to do.
So how and when does investing come into your life? Because I'm assuming it's at some point when you're at St. Joe's. Actually,
it was after. So I did minor in economics, and that was part of the motivation. Once I realized, hey, I might need to get a job after this. I minored in economics, so I didn't have to leave the liberal arts school, but it gave me a little bit of sense of business. But I still didn't know what a stock was at that point. And I got out of school, and I had two jobs that I was looking at. So one was a paralegal job. I thought about going to law school, took the LSATs, didn't study the way I needed to, so I didn't get a great grade. And I thought, well, I'll look at something else and come back to the law, or maybe I'll do paralegal work. So I had an offer to be a paralegal, and then someone else said, hey, you should apply to a job at Vanguard. I had no idea what Vanguard was, but I knew that it was close to St. Joe's, Philadelphia. They're in Valley Forge, which is about 7-8 miles from where St. Joe's campus was. And I thought, oh, I'll apply. And I still to this day do not know why they picked me, but I think because I had a good undergraduate GPA, and most importantly, I worked all 4 years at St. Joe's in the admissions office doing tours and calling students. So I had good phone skills. And so they thought, well, he's got a good GPA and he's good on the phone. We can train him up. But I remember distinctly going to the Vanguard interview, and someone said to me, well, they have this S&P 500 fund. And so I remember I went in, I had no idea what I was talking about. I was like, hey, how about that S&P? How, it was up today. I had no idea what I was talking about. But Vanguard trained me up and got me licenses, and I got to talk to 60 people every day on the phone, some good, some bad, right? But overall, it was a really quick way to ramp up and learn about the industry.
What was the job? Was it sales?
So it was about as entry level as you can get, and it was originally a registered representative. So I got a Series 6 license and a 63 license, and that gave me the ability to talk about the Vanguard funds with people who call in. And so I did that for a year. I did some other projects for them. And then I moved to the brokerage side. I really wanted to get into the stock side of things. I thought that was the really cool place to be. And I remember thinking, when I went for my interview, I'm going to go to the brokerage floor, and it's going to be madness, like in the movies, like people yelling, screaming on the phones. It was whisper silent. It was so quiet. People just talking with the clients calmly on the phone. And I thought, this is different. But I did get my Series 7 license when I was there and helped people place trades. And so I got into stocks that way. That was really how I moved into that arena.
And as you start to move more and more into stocks, was the research experience for you similar to what you had been doing in history? Like, were you using the same muscles?
Not quite yet. I think that came a little bit later when I got into stock research. I was still very much, I knew what the ticker was. I remember my first day on the job on the brokerage side, somebody called up and said, what's Microsoft trading for? And I said, what's the ticker? I just had no clue at all, right? So by the time I finished at Vanguard Brokerage, I knew a little bit more, but it really wasn't until I got to the Motley Fool where I really started learning how to research companies deeply. And that's really where the history skills started kicking in.
How much did you and your wife talk about money before you got married?
Not as much as we probably should have with hindsight. That's we were long distance relationship for 2 years. She went to James Madison, I went to St. Joe's in Philly, and then I worked at Vanguard for a year while she finished up school. And I think we were just so excited to get married and be together finally. And we just didn't really have those conversations very much. So we had to learn it together. I think what we learned over time was we had to figure out what our priorities were, what we really cared about, what we wanted to spend our money on. And ultimately we landed on, especially when we had kids, was creating memories, creating experiences together for them. And that's been some of the best money I've ever spent.
I don't want to get overly personal, but my assumption is that there was some level of division of labor as you start to figure out together, like, okay, one of you is taking on one set of financial responsibility, the other is taking on another set. One, am I correct about that? And two, were there any bumps in the road? Were there any sort of like, ooh, we actually think pretty differently about this? And if so, how'd you navigate that?
Sure. I mean, there were certainly times where that was the case. We moved. We had a house in Old Town Alexandria when I worked at the Motley Fool, and we packed up everything and moved to London to work for Motley Fool UK. And so we had a lot of major financial decisions early on in our marriage, and we had to stay focused on what we wanted to do and work together through all those challenges. And so For me, like my background was, I came from St. Joe's. I had student loans, and my wife went to James Madison, in-state school for her, and didn't have student loans. And so that was an early challenge for us, was figuring out, okay, what are the priorities between the objectives that we want to do as a couple versus paying off your loans, which you accrued before we got this thing together. So we worked through it.
I know you're an investor. I know you have your firm. But before we started recording, you and I were talking a little bit about the teaching that you do at the University of Dayton. And I'll get to the students in a second, because I am curious about sort of what the students you're teaching are, think about investing, the market, that sort of thing. But you said something that blew my mind, which is that there are a lot of colleges in America now that have student-managed investment funds. And the biggest fund in the country is actually at the University of Dayton. $80 million? It's an $80 million fund that students are managing?
Yes, that's the last number that I've heard, and that's the Davis Center at the University of Dayton. There was a large donation made by the Davis family, and then the University of Dayton's endowment also is partially managed by the student fund. And Dan Kapusta, who runs that program, does a fantastic job, and it's a very professional setup they have there. So it's a great place for students to come and learn how to manage money at a large scale.
Is that part of the pitch? Because if it's not, it certainly should be.
Yeah, it's a flagship advertisement for the School of Business. It's a beautiful thing they have there. They just had one of their big anniversaries, and they had a lot of alumni come back, and it was a really special event. It's a really special asset for the University of Dayton, and as well as the group that I helped run, which is the Hanley Center for ESG Investing. So we have a much smaller pool of money to manage, but we were inspired certainly by the Davis Center and all they've accomplished.
And if I'm a first or second year student at the University of Dayton and I sign up for Professor Wenning's class, what am I getting? What am I in for?
So far I've taught Intro to Corporate Finance. So this is a required course for all business majors. And so you get people from marketing, people from even supply chain management and information systems. They all have to take Intro to Finance. And so I've really enjoyed that experience because it forces me to get back to first principles. Trying to explain some of these things to someone who has no background in it is very difficult to do. And so trying to figure out analogies to help them understand what the sustainable growth rate of a company based on its return on equity is, right? These things are very challenging to communicate. But I really enjoy it. I've had some great experiences with the students. A couple of them come up to me afterwards and said, "Hey, I switched my major. I never knew how much finance was interesting to me, that the numbers came alive. They had taken accounting, they liked the figuring out the numbers, but they didn't realize that you could use the numbers to make decisions about their lives. And there's I've noticed a real interest, sort of a groundswell of interest in financial advising from the students before they've even started my class. And so if I can help equip them with those tools, all the better.
Well, and you and I were chatting a little bit about this before we started recording as well. It does seem like a good time for this type of skill set. It does. It's not surprising to me that more college students are interested in this type of endeavor.
Yes, it's a very useful skill for them. So if you think about the average age of a financial advisor in the United States, it's getting older. And so you are going to have some turnover. You are going to have younger people who need advice. They're going to be inheriting a lot of money from their parents and their aunts and uncles. And what do you do with that? You have 401ks that are going to need to be invested and managed for individuals. And there's just a lot of moving parts right now in the markets and in the economy. Certainly with job security, how do I manage this and make sure that I have the resources I need to meet my goals? These are all serious challenges. And to the extent that you can have knowledgeable and trustworthy people coming up from great universities like University of Dayton, it's just going to be better for the industry as a whole and for people at large.
And at any point in the corporate finance class, is there a lesson that you have or even part of a lesson plan that deals with just rampant outright fraud? Because I think that would just be fun and exciting if I were a student, like, oh, today we're going to talk about attempted fraud in the corporate finance world.
Every once in a while, I'll throw in a story that from my experience that I think drives home some points. When we talk about governance and the principal agent problem, that usually brings up some stories from my past. And
wait, what is the principal agent problem?
Sure. So the principal agent problem is that when you have a corporation, there's a separation between the owners and the managers. So the owners or the shareholders and the management may not be owners, and so they have different priorities. It's sort of like if you hire a real estate agent, the agent may have different interests than you, even though you've hired them to do a job. And so that's where having aligned financial incentives, for example, comes into play to sort of mitigate those principal agent issues.
And let's face it, some of those corporate finance fraud stories are fun. They're just entertaining stories.
They are. I have my students. I also teach a senior level course on applying sustainable investing principles. And one of the books I have them read is the Enron story. The Bethany McLean book, and I might be the only finance professor that I know of that signs a book, but I really enjoy it, and I think the kids really enjoy it too. They're adults. I shouldn't call them kids. They're adults now, but they really enjoy the book, and that was got me thinking. I mean, maybe we're not challenging the students enough to read. There's all these sort of data points about how nobody reads anymore, but maybe we're just not pushing that enough. And maybe we should.
Is that The Smartest Guys in the Room? Is that the book?
Yes. Yeah. Smartest Guys in the Room. It's a great book.
And that's why it's always a red flag when executives from a public company go to the executive editor of a magazine, because at the time I think she was writing for Fortune magazine, and they basically tried to get her fired.
Right.
And so it's like, I think that's a red flag if executives are, if a reporter is asking questions that makes the public company executives at Enron go, maybe we should just try and get her fired.
Right. Yeah, it's a pretty fascinating story. I mean, her work is so thorough. It's such a thoroughly done research. It just goes so deep into the details, and it's just amazing that this happened. And under the eye of Wall Street for a very long time, but you can see it happen. There were just perverse incentives, and that's what happens. Like Charlie Munger says, "Show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome."
I love that quote from Charlie Munger. It is not my favorite quote of his. My number one quote from Charlie Munger was when he was laying out his approach. And he said, and I'm quoting here, "Investing is where you find a few great companies and then you sit on your ass." And I love that because he's not just being lazy. He's talking about combining the long-term mindset with doing a lot of research up front before you buy shares of a company. That's what Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett did for decades. And if you want to research stocks with the same kind of professional grade data that Wall Street analysts use, then you got to check out TIKR. You get the same kind of data that they use with two important differences. One, TIKR makes it simple enough for everyday investors like you and me. And two, unlike a Bloomberg terminal, TIKR doesn't cost you $30,000 a year. It's already trusted by thousands of investors across America and around the world. Just go to TIKR, type in the name of a public company, and you will instantly see years of financials, analyst forecasts, insider trades, all in one place. And you can try it for free when you go to TIKR.com/unplugged. You can also use it to track big name money managers to see what they're buying and selling, like Warren Buffett, among others. TIKR gives you an easy way to get investing ideas and learn from the best. Save time, speed up your analysis, and try it for free. For free! Just go to TIKR.com/unplugged. That's TIKR.com/unplugged. It is the cleanest, easiest way to look deeper into any stock and see what the pros are doing. Click the link in the show notes or go to TIKR.com/unplugged. All right, let's get back to Todd. What is a thing that you have bought that makes you happy?
One of my wife's college roommates is an artist. She's a painter, Anna Bryant with a T. And she paints some beautiful nature paintings. And I've purchased some over the years for my wife and for my house. And I bought one for our 15th wedding anniversary. And it's a beach scene that Anna painted from the Outer Banks in North Carolina, where we spend every summer down there for at least a week. And it just, every time I walk past it in the hallway, it just reminds me of just happy times on the beach. And so those are the sort of things I like spending money on, the things that mean something to everybody in my family.
Have you ever made a purchase you regret and every once in a while you think about it?
Oh, sure. Certainly, there's a couple of things that we've done around the house that we did during the COVID period, so 2020, 2021, when everybody else was trying to get things done at their house. And we hired some people that, with hindsight, weren't the best people to work with. And so every time I walk down that part of the house, I think, oh, just that money spent was not well spent.
What's the last thing you splurged on for yourself?
I don't splurge besides my own business. I don't splurge much on myself, but I do like investing in my family's ambitions and their plans. So, my son wanted to play baseball this year, and he played a couple of years, and he really struggled for most of this year as well. But he wanted to keep going, so I thought, we're going to go to the batting cage. We're going to, rent. We're going to get, lessons. And I spent a lot more than I probably planned on spending. But his last game of fall ball this last week, his last game, he hit a home run and a triple. And
wow.
that to me, I haven't been that happy in such a long time. And that, to me, that's just like the perfect. I would rather spend money on that all day.
Oh yeah, how much money would you pay for your kid to have that kind of game?
No kidding. It was worth every penny.
What is something about money that you wish you knew earlier in life?
There's a lot, but I would say the idea that the things that hurt you long-term financially are not the daily lattes. They're the big purchases. And so the difficulty is that we don't make big purchases like buying a home, buying a car very often. So we don't get good at it. We have to practice it over time. And, by the time we turn, 60 or so, we've done it a couple times maybe, and we know what to do. But there's still a lot of information opacity, I guess. You're trying to figure out, okay, what should I do here? What's the right decision? Is this the right call? And so one of the things I've tried to emphasize over time, one of the things I've learned is that not to make a lot of decisions at one time. And don't make decisions when you're under stress. We bought a car one time right after we bought a house, and I had decision fatigue and I was stressed. And guess what? That the car was not a good investment. So I try to limit the number of things that I do from a trading perspective on a day. I try to limit that. I don't want to make a lot of trades in a given day. I want to make sure that I'm doing it calmly and thinking in the right timeline, because humans have developed, as we stress out about things, our time horizons naturally shrink. When you think about it, our natural defenses are the stress response is to fight or flight. And so the calmer we are, the more we can maintain that long-term time horizon and that correct long-term thinking.
What is a charitable cause that you like to support?
So we like to support the Ronald McDonald House charities in Cincinnati. 5 years ago, This week, my daughter was admitted to Cincinnati Children's Hospital for 19 days. She was very sick. We were in the ICU for 12 days. She was in there for another 7 days after that. And so she had a blood infection. So it was a very, very serious issue. And she was 3 at the time. So very little, very young. And so we were very lucky to have our house so close. We live 7 miles from one of the top 5 children's hospitals in the world. Like, we're super lucky. And Cincinnati Children's sees kids from all over the world. who and they're known for taking on people who seem hopeless, right? Their causes are hopeless, and so they bring people in from all over. And so since the Ronald McDonald House, what they do is they provide housing for the parents and the families who are in town. And so we know firsthand what that feels like to have your kid very sick in the hospital. And to the extent that we can help people not think about that, right, and focus on getting their kid better, right? That's what we care about. And so, we love giving to them. We financially, we love bringing snacks and foods for the people who live there. So, that's been something that's really dear to our hearts.
Do you have a favorite movie or TV series that has money as a through line?
Yeah, I think we'll start watching it in a couple of weeks. It's a Wonderful Life. That's one that I bet you haven't heard on this program. I don't think I've heard it in your past episodes.
No. This is a first time for the Christmas classic.
Yeah, and I use the bank run scene in my class to talk about liquidity and the importance of solvency, and teaching them that phrase. But it's it wraps up everything that and it gets me every Christmas, Chris. It gets me at the end. It's just about, money. We think that's what's going to make us happy, but it's not. It's the people in our lives.
It is an all-time classic for a reason. The last thing is a penny for your thoughts. And this is just any bit of wisdom that you want to share with people who are listening. And it can be about anything. It can be about money, but it doesn't have to be.
I'm a sucker for college commencement speeches. And one of my favorites is the writer George Saunders gave a great speech, and it's out there on the internet. I suggest you read it. But one of the lines that gets me every time is, the greatest regrets in my life are failures of kindness. Thinking about times where the opportunity to be kind was there and I didn't do it. And so I think the world needs more of that now, especially, and thinking about ways that we can just be kind to one another. The internet finds a way to pull us apart sometimes, and I think it's just getting back to being sympathetic for people who just need some sympathy.
There you go. If you want to read investing insights from Todd Wenning, that's easy. Just go to flyoverstocks.com. The link is in the show notes. I'm Chris Hill. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.